Come on in, Bolt Gang. What's happening in Los Angeles could completely change the way we look at this offense and this draft. There's heat around this team right now, the possibility of a surprise move, an explosive name hovering around Justin Herbert, and even a few developments that could make Chargers fans breathe a little easier after free agency. And the biggest part of all this? None of it feels random. It feels like a plan could be coming together behind the scenes, and if that plan is really starting to take shape, the Chargers could walk into 2026 with a whole new look, a whole new energy, and a whole new level of ambition. If you live and breathe Chargers football every single day, subscribe right now, smash the like button, turn on notifications, and drop a comment. Do you feel like the Bolts are getting ready to make a real leap? And the first read we need to make, Bolt Gang, is about the draft. Because the Chargers are heading into this 2026 class with some crystal clear needs. This team still needs a starting caliber guard, still needs depth at defensive tackle, cornerback, edge, and tight end. And on paper, that should make the 22nd pick feel pretty straightforward. But here's where things get interesting. Joe Ortiz has a track record of leaning toward the best player available. And when a general manager thinks like that, the whole board gets flipped upside down. That's exactly why the name Jordan Tyson is starting to feel very, very real. Early in the process, there was legitimate buzz about Tyson being a top 10 pick. A lot of people viewed him in the same tier as the biggest names in this receiver class. But then the hamstring issue changed the temperature of the whole conversation. He missed the combine, he missed his pro day, and when a prospect misses those major showcases, doubt starts creeping in. Not always about talent, but about risk. And in the draft, risk can hit like a storm and completely reshape where a player lands. The facts are these. Tyson was highly productive at Arizona State, putting up 711 yards and 8 touchdowns in just 9 games. The facts also say this receiver class is deep, with other names pushing and reshuffling the board. And when that happens, a player with elite upside can slide farther than expected. Now comes the interpretation. If Tyson really does fall into the 20s, the Chargers could be staring at a much tougher decision than people think. Because we're not talking about just any receiver. We're talking about a versatile weapon, a guy who can line up all over the field, a player with real juice who projects especially well out of the slot and could bring instant explosion to this offense. And when you mix that with the current state of the Chargers receiver room, this gets serious in a hurry. Keenan Allen is in free agency. Quentin Johnston has a major decision looming. So suddenly, taking a wide receiver in round 1 stops feeling like a luxury and starts feeling like a power move. Now let's be clear, it's still not the most likely outcome. The Chargers have real holes elsewhere. But that's exactly what makes this scenario so fascinating. If Tyson falls, this would not just be a need-based pick. This would be an impact pick, a statement pick, a move that says Herbert needs more firepower now, not later. Now I want to hear from Bolt Gang. If Jordan Tyson is sitting there at 22, are you making that move, or are you still prioritizing the offensive line and defense? Drop your take in the comments with no filter, because that decision could say a whole lot about where this team is headed in the draft. Now pay very close attention here, Bolt Gang, because this is where the conversation jumps to another level. It's one thing to talk about the draft. It's another thing entirely to imagine the Chargers making a real run at Brandon Ayuk. And if that door actually opens, this wouldn't just be another roster tweak. This would be a message shot across the AFC that Los Angeles is done being labeled promising and is ready to become a real threat. The main point is simple. Even after the moves this team has already made, there's still a feeling that the Chargers haven't fully solved the wide receiver room. There's youth, there's upside, there are intriguing pieces, but there still seems to be one missing ingredient, that true outside threat who can change a game with one route, one burst, one clutch catch in a massive moment. And that's exactly why Ayuk's name hits so hard. When healthy, he brings speed, explosiveness, separation, and high-level production on the outside. This is not the kind of player who just adds depth. This is the kind of player who bends coverages, changes defensive priorities, and raises the ceiling of the entire offense. He can stretch the field, take pressure off everyone else, and turn Justin Herbert into an even bigger nightmare for defenses. And when Herbert is your quarterback, that kind of addition can light the whole thing on fire. Now let's separate what's real from what's speculation. Fact: there is uncertainty around Ayuk's future in San Francisco because of injury, contract questions, and possible roster reshuffling. Fact: nothing is done right now. There is no confirmed trade. There is no official sign that the Chargers are making a move. There is no guarantee he even becomes available. Everything beyond that is interpretation, projection, and reading the smoke. But it is smoke worth watching. Because if Los Angeles believes it still needs more juice in the passing game, there are very few potentially available players who could make the kind of instant impact Ayuk could. Would it be risky? Absolutely. Would it be expensive? Very possibly. But some franchises only change their future when they make the bold move, the uncomfortable move, the move that makes the rest of the league sit up straight. And maybe that's the whole point. The Chargers don't just need to fill out the roster. They need to know when it's time to strike for a difference maker who can elevate everything around him. If this name really enters the picture, it changes how we look at the rest of the offseason. It changes the draft. It changes the urgency. It changes the expectations. And it might reveal that the vision in Los Angeles is a lot more aggressive than it first appeared. If you want me to keep bringing you Chargers analysis with no fluff all offseason long, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, because if a real Ayuk signal shows up, we're talking about it immediately. Now answer me in the comments, are you going all in on that move, or is the risk too big for the Chargers? And now we get to a part of the offseason that may not create the same fireworks as a name like Ayuk, but it tells us a whole lot about the direction of this franchise. Because while a lot of people focus only on who a team adds, there's another read that matters just as much, who they refuse to overpay. And on that front, Los Angeles may have quietly pulled off one of the smartest wins of the entire offseason. Odafe Oweh and Zion Johnson were both names worth watching, but for very different reasons. Oweh arrived from Baltimore in October and delivered 7.5 sacks in 12 games with the Bolts. On top of that, he exploded for a 3-sack performance in the wild card, which is exactly the kind of showcase that sends a player's market into orbit. On the other side, Zion Johnson represented a different kind of dilemma. The interior offensive line needed help. He was a former first-round pick. He's still young, and that's the kind of profile that tempts teams into paying for what a player might become rather than what he actually is. But the Chargers didn't buy into that at the price it reached. Gary Davenport of Bleacher Report listed both contracts among the worst overpays of the 2026 offseason. Oweh landed a 4-year, $96 million deal with Washington. Zion Johnson got 3 years and $49.5 million from Cleveland. And this is the part that matters for Chargers fans. Los Angeles knew both players from the inside out. They knew exactly what each guy brought, exactly what each guy didn't bring, and exactly how far they were willing to go financially. With Oweh, the case was pretty straightforward. He's a useful pass rusher, still in his prime, but he has limitations against the run and doesn't have the all-around track record to justify that kind of monster deal. And here's the hidden gem in that story. First Baltimore passed, then the Chargers passed too. When two well-run organizations look at the same player and both refuse to pay that number, that sends a message. With Zion Johnson, the read gets even sharper. Because yes, the Chargers needed help on the interior. They could have easily fallen into the trap of paying big money just to avoid opening another hole on the roster. But they didn't. And that suggests discipline, composure, and one very important message. This front office is not going to pay for draft pedigree, name value, or panic. Does that solve the offensive line problem? No. Does it magically fix the pass rush? No. But this kind of restraint can save a franchise from the kind of bad contracts that clog the cap and choke a roster for years. And in an AFC loaded with heavyweights, avoiding the wrong move can be just as valuable as making the flashy one. Bolt meter time. From 0 to 10, how much confidence does this front office approach give you? And drop it in the comments with no filter. Were the Chargers smart for staying away from those numbers? Or did they let too much talent walk out the door? And the fourth storyline might be the sneakiest one of all. Bolt gang. Because this is not the kind of topic that dominates headlines like wide receiver or edge rusher, but it may be hiding a much bigger need than a lot of people want to admit. The Chargers could enter this draft looking at safety a lot more seriously than most fans expect, and the name gaining real traction in that conversation is Emmanuel McNeill-Warren. The reason goes beyond just the prospect himself. It's about the bigger picture of the roster. Field Yates described McNeill-Warren as a player with a strong chance to be the third safety taken in the first round. He highlighted the fluidity, length, vision, and natural disruptive ability. The production stands out too, especially when it comes to turnovers and pass breakups over the past few seasons. Lance Zierlein took a similar angle, describing him as a downhill safety, a physical presence, a player who brings value near the line of scrimmage and can help strengthen the run defense while acting like an enforcer in the middle of the field. And this is where the story stops being just a scouting report and becomes a Chargers read. Because whenever people talk about this team's needs, the conversation almost always jumps straight to guard, edge, corner, and tight end. But there's something lurking beneath the surface at safety: age and long-term uncertainty. Derwin James Jr. is set to hit next offseason as a 30-year-old free agent. That alone should set off an alarm. It doesn't mean immediate decline. It doesn't mean the end is here tomorrow. But it absolutely means Los Angeles has to think ahead. Now add in the run defense issue. The Chargers' run defense numbers looked shiny for stretches of the season, But when the team lost, the cracks showed. In those losses, opposing teams ran far more effectively. And in the wildcard round, it showed up again, with the Patriots topping 140 rushing yards in a rough loss. So maybe that solid run defense image wasn't the full truth after all. Maybe it was a little fool's gold, and the real weakness showed up under the brightest lights. And if McNeil Warren is the type of safety who can play downhill, close space, and bring more physicality near the line, then the pick starts making a whole lot more sense than it does at first glance. Especially with Chris O'Leary now leading the defense, a coach with real experience in the secondary and an eye for this kind of role. That changes the read. Suddenly it stops looking like a luxury and starts looking like preparation. Now, to be fair, there are limits. The scouting also points out that he may need some schematic protection against speed mismatches. So we're not talking about a perfect prospect, but we are talking about a possible fit for a problem that may be getting overlooked. Now I want to hear from Bolt Gang. Would taking a safety in round 1 be smart future planning, or a total distraction from the real priorities? Drop your take in the comments, tell me which position you would target at 22, and tell me whether this name solves a real Chargers problem or not. At the end of the day, Bolt Gang, the message here is loud and clear. The Chargers may not be having the flashiest offseason in the league, but they are stacking signs that something bigger could be building. Whether it's through the draft, through a bold move for another receiver, or through the discipline to avoid bloated contracts, every step feels like part of a larger story. And that story revolves around giving Justin Herbert and this roster more power, more balance, and more punch. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these paths excites you the most? Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and drop your comment. Because right here, we're tracking every single Chargers move.